Hey guys, tonight we begin with one of history's most chaotic gentlemen, Dionysus, the god of wine, theater, and occasional emotional breakdowns. You might think he's all grapes and glitter, but no. Tonight, you'll see what happens when this divine troublemaker decides to civilize how humans drink. Spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this party. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the sticky warmth of an ancient Greek afternoon. The air smells like figs, wild thyme, and someone's very bad idea of perfume. The sea is glittering in the distance, a slice of silver beneath the hills, and somewhere nearby, a flute is trying its best to sound sober. Dionysus is pacing in front of you, barefoot, his hair tangled like it's made of vines. He's muttering something about standards. Apparently, mortals have started drinking wine straight from jugs. No ritual, no rhythm, no respect. If I give them nectar, he says, waving his hand at a clay cup, the least they can do is pretend to sip it gracefully. You nod, because it seems like the safe thing to do when a god is ranting. The idea sounds harmless enough. Create a little etiquette, bring some order to the chaos. But if you've learned anything about Dionysus, it's that his version of order usually ends with someone dancing on a table in a lion pelt. He tells you he's planning a grand experiment. We'll teach them balance, he says. Pleasure and restraint, joy and wisdom. His eyes flash gold for a moment, and he smiles like someone who definitely plans to ignore his own rules. As you follow him through olive groves and buzzing meadows, he talks about how wine is divine blood, a liquid that connects gods and mortals. They think it's just fermented fruit, he says with mock horror. But no, it's transformation. It's art. It's social lubrication with ambition. You get the sense he's rehearsing a TED Talk that no mortal asked for. By the time you reach the village, people are already gathering. Someone has carved a wooden sign that says, "Rules of Refined Drinking," which feels ironic since it's nailed crookedly into a tree. Farmers, sailors, and shepherds all crowd around, holding cups of questionable cleanliness. Dionysus claps his hands. "Welcome to the first civilized drinking ceremony," he announces, which sounds noble right up until he hands out garlands of ivy and tells everyone to wear them so the gods can tell who's fun. The crowd cheers. Someone trips over a goat. The air fills with laughter, dust, and the unmistakable sound of clay shattering. Dionysus raises his cup. First rule, he declares, no one drinks alone. A noble sentiment, until you realize it's less about companionship and more about ensuring everyone's equally unsteady. Second rule, he continues, never spill a drop. It offends the earth. Third rule, actually, forget the third rule. Let's improvise. The first sip burns your throat, tart and earthy. It's not the sweet nectar you imagined. This is early Greek wine, raw and unfiltered, closer to syrup than elegance. Dionysus watches you with amusement. They'll learn to water it down one day, he says, but right now, they're still chasing the gods. Somewhere in the chaos, a man begins to recite poetry, another sings an off-key ode to olives, and someone's grandmother demands a toast to not dying of stomach rot. It's messy, loud, alive, and for a fleeting moment, you understand what Dionysus means by divine transformation, how ordinary people can turn a rough drink into something sacred just by laughing together. A widely accepted fact drifts into your mind. The ancient Greeks truly did mix wine with water, not to dilute the pleasure, but to balance it, to honor the god by keeping joy in check. Dionysus, however, seems uninterested in moderation. He's spinning in circles, cup in hand, proclaiming himself inventor of manners. You watch as he demonstrates the proper way to swirl a cup. He tilts it gently, sniffs, then accidentally spills it down his own chest. "See," he says proudly. "Confidence. That's the key." You try to follow along, swirling your cup carefully, pretending you know what notes you're tasting. Maybe fig, maybe regret. Dionysus leans close and whispers, "The trick is not knowing what you're doing, but doing it like you invented it." The crowd roars with laughter, and someone shouts, "Long live the god of spills." As the sun dips low, the atmosphere grows dreamlike. Shadows stretch long across the ground, turning the fields into pools of bronze light. Dionysus begins humming, a strange, hypnotic tune that feels older than language. Even the insects quiet down to listen. And that's when you realize, for all the noise and absurdity, something sacred is actually happening here. Wine isn't just drink, it's a ritual of connection. The sound of shared laughter, the rhythm of cups clinking, the warmth in your chest. It all blurs into something almost divine. Historians still wonder if Dionysus was meant to represent indulgence or insight, madness or wisdom. But as you watch him dance barefoot through spilled wine and laughter, you start to think maybe it was never meant to be one or the other. Maybe it's both, the chaos and the grace, inseparable, swirling together like the wine in your cup. As twilight falls, Dionysus declares the ceremony a triumph. "We've done it," he announces. "We've made drinking classy." The crowd cheers, unaware that half of them have ivy in their hair and wine stains down their togas. You smile. Somehow, against all odds, the god of madness might have invented civilization, or at least its most entertaining version. The night hums with insects and laughter. Dionysus slumps onto a stone bench beside you, eyes half closed, and murmurs, "Tomorrow, we teach them posture." You're not sure whether to laugh or pray. By morning, the world smells like hangover and sunshine. You wake under a fig tree, sticky with spilled wine and faintly regretting your life choices. Dionysus is already up, if up means lying in the grass, humming something ancient and off-key. The ivy crown he wore last night now looks like it's trying to crawl away. "Today," he says, without opening his eyes, "we improve the process." You know better than to ask what process means, but he answers anyway. The grapes, of course. The vines. The people. The art of making the thing we ruin ourselves with. And that's how you end up walking through the early vineyards of Greece. The sun low and gold. The earth dry and crumbly underfoot. Farmers work barefoot, their tunics hitched up, crushing grapes in broad clay pits. It's not exactly glamorous. The smell is halfway between heaven and compost. Dionysus beams, watching them stomp in rhythm. "See," he says, "it's music. It's movement. It's agriculture, choreography, and therapy, all at once." One farmer nods politely while clearly questioning the god's sobriety. The first known vineyards really did look something like this. Clusters of vines looping around wooden stakes, the fruit thick-skinned and wild-tasting. The wine they made wasn't filtered or aged in barrels. It was stored in amphorae sealed with olive oil or resin, giving it a smoky tang. Real historians agree the Greeks were the first to think of wine not just as drink, but as culture, something that could express a place, a season, even a mood. Dionysus, of course, takes full credit. You trail him deeper into the vines, where the sun filters through leaves the color of minted bronze. He plucks a cluster of grapes and squishes them between his fingers. Perfect, he declares, though you're not sure by what standard. We'll call this etiquette in liquid form. He insists you help with quality control. You find yourself barefoot, feet sinking into a vat of grapes. The juice is cold, sticky, and full of tiny seeds that stick to your skin like confetti from a party you didn't mean to attend. Dionysus watches, amused. Now that's the true art of balance, standing upright while nature tries to make you slip. As you stomp, villagers gather around. Someone brings a flute. Another starts singing a song with more enthusiasm than pitch. Dionysus throws an arm around you and declares, This is civilization's heartbeat. He's not entirely wrong. The act of turning fruit into wine was one of humanity's earliest communal rituals, part celebration, part chemistry, part chaos. And from that chaos, new traditions were born. A lesser-known detail, before the Greeks perfected their grape-pressing methods, they often used goat skins to ferment the juice. The lingering scent gave early wines a distinctly barnyard aroma, something modern sommeliers would politely describe as earthy, and everyone else would call, please pour me water instead. Dionysus, however, insists the goat adds character. He strokes a nearby goat, like a sommelier praising a vintage. She's the secret ingredient, he says. The goat looks unimpressed. To honor this partnership, Dionysus decides to introduce another refinement, music during fermentation. The grapes must feel the rhythm, he says solemnly, before producing a tambourine from nowhere and launching into what can only be described as interpretive stomping. You join in, because saying no to a god is generally bad form. Soon, half the vineyard is clapping along, the other half pretending this is perfectly normal divine behavior. The goat joins in too, bleeding in what might be the correct key. Somewhere between laughter and dizziness, you realize Dionysus isn't trying to teach etiquette at all. He's teaching surrender. The grace of letting go, of not trying to control the moment. Wine isn't about rules, it's about rhythm. As the afternoon wears on, the air grows thick with sweetness and sun. Bees hover lazily above the vats. Dust motes glitter like tiny spirits. Dionysus sprawls beneath a fig tree, eyes half-lidded, watching the workers dance and sing. They think they're making wine, he murmurs, but really, they're making stories. He's right again. Every drop that will one day pour from those amphorae will carry whispers of this day. The laughter, the songs, the barefoot steps, the goat's reluctant accompaniment. You sit beside him, wiping grape pulp from your hands. He picks up a fig, bites into it, and hands you the other half. It's sweet, sticky, a little wild. Mortals always think etiquette means control, he says softly. But maybe it's just knowing when to stop pretending. A breeze ripples through the vines, carrying the smell of crushed fruit and sun-warmed leaves. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Dionysus snaps his fingers. We need better presentation, he announces. Wine should have flair, elegance, maybe synchronized toasting. You groan, already predicting disaster. He leaps to his feet and gestures grandly to the crowd. New rule. Every sip begins with art. Dance, sing, pose dramatically, it doesn't matter. But make it memorable. What follows is an explosion of chaotic theater. One man performs a tragic monologue before sipping. A woman does a handstand and drinks upside down. A child declares herself Queen of Grapes and demands applause. Dionysus laughs, so hard he nearly falls into the vat. Historians still debate whether early Greek wine rituals were meant to honor the gods or simply entertain them. Maybe both. After all, reverence and ridiculousness often travel together. As the sun sinks low, turning everything gold, you find yourself swaying gently, cup in hand, surrounded by laughter, grapes, and questionable choreography. It's absurd, it's beautiful, it's entirely Dionysian. He looks at you, grinning. "Tell me, mortal," he says, "do you think they'll remember my etiquette?" You glance at the stained ground, the goat chewing on a wreath, the villagers laughing through hiccups. "Oh," you say, "they'll remember something." Dionysus raises his cup high. Then civilization is saved. And as he drinks, grape juice drips down his chin like royal insignia. He doesn't notice, or maybe that's the point. The next evening arrives wrapped in honey-colored light and the faint scent of smoke. Dionysus has decided that wine should now be intellectual. Last night was the body, he declares, lounging on a half-broken amphora. Tonight, we involve the mind. You immediately feel uneasy. Dionysus and intellectual are words that rarely coexist peacefully. He waves his hand toward a nearby courtyard where a few philosophers, real ones, with respectable beards, are setting out cushions, lamps, and clay cups. They call it a symposium, he says, a drinking together, a meeting of great minds and terrible decisions. You watch as they arrange themselves in a circle, reclining elegantly, like a painting that's one sneeze away from chaos. The air buzzes with expectation and also gnats. Dionysus plops down among them, gesturing for you to do the same. "Rule 1, he says solemnly, "water the wine." You blink. The same god who, yesterday, laughed at moderation now insists on it. If they drink it straight, he explains, they'll forget their ideas before finishing their sentences. If they dilute it, say 1 part wine, 3 parts water, they can argue about metaphysics all night. And so, the first recorded form of wine etiquette takes shape, born of necessity, not nobility. You pour from a tall amphora into a wide bowl, add water, and pass it to the left. The liquid swirls like diluted sunset. The host, an older philosopher with an expression that says, "I haven't slept since Socrates," begins with a toast to wisdom, beauty, and moderately good decisions. Everyone drinks. The conversation starts innocently enough. Discussions of virtue, friendship, the nature of pleasure. You try to follow along, but Dionysus keeps whispering commentary in your ear. "That one," he says, nodding to a young man quoting Plato, "once tried to debate a tree. The tree won. Despite the teasing, there's something mesmerizing about it all. The room flickers with lamplight, laughter rises and falls like the tide, and ideas start to blur into melody." The Greeks believed that the symposium wasn't just about drinking. It was about connection, blending intellect with intoxication, philosophy with friendship. A widely accepted historical fact drifts through your mind. At real symposia, a designated symposiarch, the master of drinking, controlled how strong the wine would be and when each round was served. It was, in theory, a way to maintain dignity. In practice, it was a power trip disguised as hospitality. Tonight's symposiarch is Dionysus himself, which means all hope for dignity is gone. He decides every toast needs a theme. "This round," he announces, "is for the beauty of imperfection." He raises his cup, promptly drops it, and beams. "See, I embody the lesson." You drink, because at this point it feels safer than not drinking. A younger philosopher named Cleon argues that watered wine is weak, an insult to the vine. Another, older and smug, counters that only barbarians drink their wine neat. You watch as their debate escalates in both vocabulary and volume until Dionysus interrupts. "You're both wrong," he says cheerfully. The correct ratio is whatever makes you confess your secrets but still remember them later. There's a pause, then laughter. You take another sip. He might be onto something. The night drifts like smoke. Cups clink. Figs are passed around. Someone starts singing off-key. You're not sure if the topic is still philosophy or if it's become a collective therapy session. One man claims to have invented truth. Another insists that his cat has opinions on justice. Somewhere in the middle of this delightful nonsense, Dionysus leans toward you and whispers, "Etiquette isn't about control. It's about pretending chaos is intentional." You try to process that, but the music starts. A lyre begins plucking softly, and Dionysus joins in humming an unfamiliar tune. Low, haunting, ancient. The whole group falls quiet. The sound vibrates in your chest like the memory of something sacred. For a moment, the laughter fades. The conversation drifts into silence. The god's eyes glint in the lamplight, and for the first time, he looks serious. "They think this is drinking," he says softly. "But what they're really doing is remembering. The vine remembers the sun. The wine remembers the hand that crushed it. The drinker remembers who they are, briefly, before the forgetting begins." Historians still wonder if Dionysian rituals inspired the very structure of the symposium, or if the symposium humanized the wild worship of Dionysus. Maybe both, the divine and the domestic, tangled in one long sip. The spell breaks when someone hiccups loudly. Dionysus laughs until he cries, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "There," he says, balance restored. The rest of the night feels like floating. One moment you're discussing courage, the next you're debating whether grapes have souls. You can't remember who said what. Only the rhythm of voices, the warm pulse of laughter, and the faint hum of crickets beyond the courtyard walls. Someone proposes a final toast. To the god who gave us joy and consequences. Dionysus raises his cup with mock solemnity. And to the mortals who pretend they can tell the difference. You drink again, half smiling, half wondering what exactly you're learning here. Maybe that etiquette is less about rules and more about rhythm. The shared heartbeat of a gathering, the rise and fall of laughter, the silence that follows a good thought. By the time the lamps burn low, people are half asleep on their cushions. Dionysus reclines, eyes glowing faintly. "See," he murmurs, "civilization. They drink, they talk, they question, they forget their worries. And occasionally, their sandals." He stretches, content. "Tomorrow, we add masks," he says mysteriously. "Every good culture needs theater." You glance around at the dozing philosophers, the scattered figs, the trail of spilled wine. Civilization, it turns out, looks a lot like a sleepover with better vocabulary. You lie back, staring at the stars through the open courtyard. The night air tastes faintly of resin and myth. Dionysus hums softly beside you, already dreaming of his next great idea. The next day arrives smelling of smoke, sweet wine, and distant waves. You wake to the sound of Dionysus rehearsing something that sounds suspiciously like a dramatic monologue. He's standing on a rock, one hand on his chest, the other holding an amphora aloft. "Tonight," he proclaims, "we merge truth and illusion. Etiquette is theater." You squint at him, groggy. "Didn't we already do that?" "Ah," he says gravely, "but now we do it on purpose." By evening, the courtyard has transformed. Torches flicker along the walls, silk drapes flutter in the warm wind, and a dozen masks lie arranged on a long table. Each one painted with exaggerated expressions: joy, sorrow, rage, bliss. Dionysus paces before them like a proud stage director. "This," he explains, "is how mortals learn honesty. Hide behind a mask, and you'll finally say what you mean. It makes a strange kind of sense. You take one, painted half smiling, half crying, and hold it up. It smells faintly of olive oil and smoke. Dionysus chooses his own, a ridiculous golden grin that looks like it's about to tell a terrible joke. Remember, he says, masks are truth's disguise. The only rule is, never remove it until the night ends. The guests arrive one by one. Poets, farmers, dancers, the philosophers from the night before, still pretending they remember the debates. Everyone picks a mask. Someone strikes a lyre. Dionysus claps his hands. Let the etiquette of emotion begin. And just like that, chaos becomes art. The first performer steps forward, wearing a mask of exaggerated despair, and recites a tragic poem about spilled wine as if it were a national catastrophe. The crowd applauds. The next leaps onto a bench and declares eternal love for olives. Dionysus weeps dramatically, then shouts, "Encore!" You realize, slowly, that this is the birth of something more than entertainment. It's catharsis, another of Dionysus's inventions, though he'll never call it that. People are letting go of their fear, their pride, their exhaustion. Behind painted faces, they speak freely, and in doing so, they find a kind of peace. A widely accepted historical fact. Greek theater truly did evolve from Dionysian festivals, rituals filled with music, wine, masks, and collective emotion. The first tragedies were performed not as stories, but as offerings, moments of shared vulnerability to honor the god of transformation. You watch as the crowd sways between laughter and tears, between solemn ritual and total absurdity. It's etiquette of the soul, a structured chaos, held together by rhythm and wine. At some point, Dionysus takes the stage. His golden grin gleams in the torchlight. "Mortals," he declares, "what is truth?" Someone shouts, "Wine." Another yells, "Regret." A third says both. Dionysus raises his cup. "Excellent. You've learned balance." He begins to tell a story, a strange, wandering tale about a man who tried to pour the sea into a cup. Each time the cup overflowed, the man drank faster, thinking he could keep up. "The sea is truth," Dionysus says softly. "The cup is us." The crowd falls silent. Even the cicadas pause. The torches flicker like they're holding their breath. Then he laughs, a deep, musical sound that rolls through the night. "And that," he says, "is why I invented parties." The tension breaks. Laughter ripples across the courtyard. Someone begins to dance. Another joins. Soon the air hums with the sound of bare feet on stone, tambourines rattling, wine cups clinking. The masks blur in motion, faces of joy and sorrow spinning together until they become one expression of something ancient and human. You dance too, though you pretend you're just being polite. Dionysus spins past you, vines trailing from his hair, gold paint smudged across his face. "See," he says breathlessly, "honesty through chaos." As the night deepens, stories grow more personal. Behind their masks, people confess things they'd never dare say in daylight. Fears, desires, regrets. One woman admits she no longer believes in the gods. Another laughs that she only pretends to like her husband's poetry. Dionysus listens to each with gentle delight, nodding like a therapist who accepts payment in song. A lesser-known detail. In some ancient festivals, participants would drink, wear masks, and tell personal truths aloud as offerings to Dionysus. The idea was that when truth passed through performance, it became safe, released from the burden of secrecy. As you watch the faces in the firelight, you realize how clever this god really is. He's not teaching rules of politeness. He's teaching how to bear being human. The etiquette of vulnerability. At some point, Dionysus removes his mask, not breaking his own rule, but transforming it. The gold grin seems to melt into his real smile. His eyes glow faintly, not with mischief now, but something like tenderness. You see, he says quietly, when everyone wears a mask, no one is pretending anymore. Historians still wonder if Dionysus was a symbol of madness or revelation, whether his festivals freed people or simply unhinged them. But sitting here, wine-warm and dizzy, you start to think maybe those are the same thing. The torches burn lower. The music slows. People collapse onto cushions and each other. Dionysus stands in the middle of it all, surveying the joyful ruin. Ah, he sighs, civilized emotion. We're getting closer. He looks at you, his expression soft. Tomorrow, he says, comes the hardest part. The morning after. That's when we'll see if civilization can survive sobriety. He grins, takes one last drink, and disappears into the shadows, leaving behind only the faint sound of laughter and the echo of masks whispering in the wind. You sit still, letting the firelight flicker across your borrowed face. You're not sure who you are beneath it right now, but strangely, that feels okay. The world wakes up with a headache. You open your eyes to find yourself on cool marble, tangled in a discarded silk robe that definitely isn't yours. The courtyard looks like a battlefield of celebration, upturned amphorae, wilting garlands, footprints in spilled wine. The air smells of smoke, figs, and philosophical regret. Dionysus sits cross-legged beside a fountain, sipping from a cup that may or may not contain water. His eyes are half-lidded, his hair still a tangle of vines. "Good morning, civilization," he says. You groan softly. "Is it over?" He smiles, the kind of smile that says, "Probably not." No, no. This is the best part, the reflection. He gestures at the wreckage around you. This is what etiquette looks like after the performance. A few philosophers are still asleep in awkward poses. One clutches his mask like a security blanket. A goat naps proudly on a pile of wreaths. You have no memory of when the goat arrived. Dionysus rises, stretching. Now comes the morning after civilization, the hangover of the human soul. The moment when mortals remember what they said, what they felt, and wonder if it was worth it. You stand slowly, brushing dust from your knees. The fountain water sparkles in the early light, reflecting the broken faces of the masks scattered around it. For the first time, the courtyard is quiet enough to hear the sea in the distance. You wanted etiquette, you remind him. Rules. Refinement. He laughs, the sound soft and hoarse from too much laughter the night before. Oh, that was just the bait. I gave them etiquette, yes, but what they found was empathy. He kicks lightly at a fallen amphora. They'll clean this up, tell stories about it, maybe even write plays. They'll call it culture. He looks thoughtful for a moment. But really, it's just how humans process the mess of being alive. You follow him as he wanders through the aftermath. Bees hum lazily around dropped grapes. Someone's lyre lies on the ground, a string broken, still vibrating faintly from last night's music. Dionysus picks it up, plucks the remaining strings, and hums softly. This is what's left when the music ends, he says. Memory and thirst. A widely accepted historical fact floats through your wine-fogged mind. Ancient Greeks often began their festivals to Dionysus with wild revelry, but always ended them in calm ritual. Offerings poured into the earth, gratitude murmured to the soil and sky. Even in chaos, they sought closure. Balance. The god tilts his head, as if hearing your thought. Exactly, he says. The art of drinking isn't about indulgence, it's about return. You lose yourself, then you find yourself again, a little softer, a little wiser. He hands you the lyre. Play something. I don't know how. Neither did they when they started singing, he says with a shrug. You strum a clumsy note. It wobbles through the quiet air, imperfect but honest. Dionysus closes his eyes, swaying gently. Perfect, he murmurs. Music, like wine, forgives you while you're still learning. The sun climbs higher. One by one, the revelers begin to wake. There's laughter, groaning, a few half-hearted vows of never again. Dionysus smiles at them like a proud teacher watching children discover consequences. He pours the last of the wine into the earth, murmuring something you can't quite catch. You think it's a prayer, but it might just be poetry. Historians still wonder if Dionysus's cults were warnings against excess or celebrations of freedom. Maybe both. Looking at him now, half god, half dream, you realize he embodies the contradiction perfectly. He didn't teach restraint, he taught release. He didn't civilize drinking. He revealed that it was already a kind of ceremony. You wander toward the edge of the courtyard. Beyond it, the hills rolled down to the sea, green and glittering. A breeze drifts up from the water, carrying salt and silence. Dionysus joins you, cup dangling loosely in his hand. They'll forget most of this by tomorrow, he says softly. But not how it felt. You glance at him. Do you ever tire of teaching the same lesson? He smiles faintly. Every generation needs reminding. Civilization is just people pretending they've figured out how to be kind. You watch as he sets the cup down on the stone wall, leaving a faint purple ring behind. Let them think they invented etiquette, he says, eyes glinting. I'll know the truth. They invented compassion by accident. The sun warms your shoulders. The laughter behind you softens into chatter, the first signs of a new day. Somewhere, someone starts sweeping the courtyard. The smell of fresh bread drifts from the village below. Dionysus stretches like a cat. Well, he sighs, we've done it again. Turned chaos into culture. He grins at you. Not bad for a god with no bedtime. You laugh, and he claps you on the shoulder. Go on, he says. Tell them the story someday. Just make it sound like I planned it. You nod. The sea glimmers in the distance, and for a moment, the whole world feels balanced on the edge of laughter and quiet, just as he intended. Then Dionysus turns toward the hills, humming the same tune he played on the lyre, and fades into the sunlight, leaving behind the faint scent of grapes, smoke, and the gentle realization that civilization was never about rules at all. It was about connection. And connection, it seems, begins with a shared cup.